Hello class, and welcome to the Excel Review Solution Videos Part 1. You note that this Excel workbook has two worksheets. The one we are currently looking at, Project A, and then Project Item Cost, which is the list of project items and their respective unit cost. The goal of this workbook is to enable a project manager or anyone else interested in tracking the progress of a project to be able to quickly view what the total spending on a project is and whether or not the project is over budget. This, of course, is a very rudimentary approach to project management. This spreadsheet is not meant to illustrate project management principles, but simply to serve as an opportunity to practice some Excel formulas. Remember that a very important goal of using Excel is to ensure that we create solutions that are easily reusable. There are two ways in which this comes to mind in this particular exercise. Number one is that we might have a project B, project C, and so on, and we want to be able to quickly reuse the work that we have done on project A in the project B worksheet. At the end of the video series, I will demonstrate how that can be done. The other item, of course, where reusability becomes important is that over time, the actual units that we have consumed from each project item will change. We want to be able to update the actual units consumed and see the new totals and get a new determination whether or not our project is over budget. In addition, we also need to be able to add project items where necessary and update the cost of existing project items. And these new items and these updated cost figures should be available for each project. These are some of the overarching goals of our workbook and illustrate how we can develop a solution one time in Excel and reuse it quickly for, again, in this case, new projects or when updates to existing projects occur. Let's get started in this first part by reviewing the entries for column C, which is going to be the unit cost. Each of the project items listed here has a specific unit cost associated with it. The list of project items, as you have already noted, is on the second sheet in this workbook. So the sheet project A will have to obtain the value of the unit cost for a project manager, for supplies, and the other project items listed there from the second spreadsheet. This is done using one of the lookup functions. Now, there are many lookup functions in Excel. The most commonly used ones are the Vlookup and HLookup. They are nearly identical, where the V in Vlookup stands for vertical, meaning that your information is organized in columns, and HLookup, where the H stands for horizontal, meaning that your information is organized in rows. In our case, our information on the second spreadsheet is organized in columns, so we are going to use the Vlookup function. Now, there are many ways to get started in inserting a function in Excel. One way is to go to the Formulas tab in the ribbon, click the Insert Function button, and either type the name of the function if you know which function you will be using, or a part of a description of the function. So we know we will be using the Vlookup function. Click Go, select Vlookup, and click OK. Then Excel will prompt us to provide values for each of the function arguments So a function is usually going to need additional information in order to do its job. Those are called the arguments. You see that the Vlookup function takes 4 arguments, 3 of which are required. The required arguments are bolded, so the range lookup, the last argument, is not required. We can leave it blank. However, these decisions are important and they come with consequences. Now we'll start with the basic thing here in the Vlookup. The lookup value is defined as the value to be found in the first column of the table and can be a value, a reference, or a text string. So we need to provide the Vlookup function here with something to look for in the project item cost spreadsheet. So this will be, for row 2, the project manager value. Now we don't want to retype the words project manager because that could change. We might have something different as the first project item next week or for a different project. So we want to refer to cell A2 where we find the words project manager. The next argument asks us for the table array, and the table array is the collection of all the values that we are going to look in to find our related item. So that is on our second spreadsheet. Now when I start selecting these values, you will see that Excel is helping me out by showing me that I'm going to the project item cost spreadsheet and using cells A2 to C5. I have to skip the first row, which contains header values and not actual entries. Now of course A2 to C5 is not correct. I need to select A2 through C6, but note what happens here. Now instead of displaying a range of values, Excel has changed this to project item cost. Project item cost is a named range, and I will talk a little bit more about named ranges in one of the other videos. For now, just understand that a named range is something that I have defined. I have selected the range A2 through C6 and given that the name project item cost. I did that in advance before I gave the spreadsheet to you. The third and last required argument for the Vlookup function is the column index number. And the column index number is just the numeric position of the column from which we will retrieve the value. So let's take a quick peek back at our project item cost. Item is column 1, unit is column 2, cost is column 3. Now this is relative to the range we have selected. So we have to watch out for that. Column C may not always be the third column in the range that we're selecting as the table array. So the column index number is 3. And we already receive an answer from our lookup. And the formula result indicates 100. So this means that according to Excel, the hourly cost of a project manager is 100. But that is not correct because we clearly see on our spreadsheet that the hourly cost of a project manager is 50. What went wrong? Well, this is where it becomes very important to have a clear understanding of all of the function arguments, even those that are optional. Now, we did not provide a value for range lookup, in which case we will be looking for the closest match in the first column instead of an exact match. Now, there is an exact match. Project Manager, that project item value has an exact match. This is some of the interesting and odd behavior that you will read about when you look up the help for the Vlookup function. It says here, as an important note, that if range lookup is either true or is omitted, the values in the first column of the table array must be placed in ascending sort order. Otherwise, Vlookup might not return the correct value. Let's take another look at our spreadsheet. Our item list starts with Project Manager, goes to Supplies, then Meeting Space, then Equipment B, and then Equipment A. This is not sorted in ascending order. So there are two things I could do to fix my problem. The first thing to do would be to sort my list. Now that is an acceptable solution, but it may not always return what I'm expecting still. If I have a project item that does not have an exact match, using the range lookup of true or blank, my formula is always going to return a result. In other words, if I had an item of project management entered on project A's spreadsheet, then I would find project manager as the match. That's probably not what I would intend. Instead, I need to make sure that my Vlookup gives me an exact match and only an exact match. Now, if there is no exact match, then it will provide me with an error message, which is still better than providing me with the incorrect information. So I'm going to use false as the value for the range lookup, and now I see that my formula result is $50. That is indeed the correct value of a project manager's hourly unit cost. Now I'm satisfied that my Vlookup function is correct, and I will click OK. So let's make a quick check though. If I change the item, I should see a change in the unit cost. So maybe I have supplies. So immediately when I change my project item, the unit cost switches to 20, which is indeed the correct value for a supply. I'll switch it back to Project Manager, but I'll make an accidental, well, in this case, intentional typo. And now it tells me NA for not available. There is no project item on my cost list that's project MGR. Therefore, I get a NA. So I'm looking for an exact match. As you recall, the last argument, false, ensures that I will only find exact matches and not approximate matches. Now, I want to, of course, perform the same lookup for my other project items. I could insert the formula in the same way for each of my rows, or I can use Excel's copy and paste function. So I can copy this cell value C2 and paste it in C3. You will note that because I have copied from row 2 and pasted into row 3, that my lookup now indeed starts looking for A3 and no longer for A2. This is of course a desired effect. In row 3, I don't want to look up the cost for the item in row 2, I want to look up the cost for the item in row 3. Now you have to watch out for this, because sometimes this is unintended behavior. Another way of quickly copying a formula from one cell to another is to use the fill handle, which is the lower right corner of a cell. you can just drag down the fill handle, let go at the end of your range, and it will be just as if you copied and pasted. So this is the end of part 1 of the Excel Review Solution video series, where we've reviewed the Vlookup function. Remember that the Vlookup needs 4 pieces of information to do its job. The first one is, what are we looking for? The second one is, where are we looking for it? The third one is, when we find a match, what column are we using to provide the additional information? And the last one, usually you want to set it to false because you will be looking for exact matches. In the next part, we will be looking at columns D and F.